Good afternoon, football fans. Happy World Cup time. I'm Jeff Boulier, reporter with Green Bay Press Gazette, here with several Green Bay Press Gazette colleagues to talk a little World Cup, because we are thoroughly excited that the beautiful game is returning to the world stage, and being in Green Bay, sometimes it is a little hard to find a few fellow soccer fans out there. So we thought we'd perhaps give you guys a little bit of a avenue to get a little bit more pumped up, share some of the excitement, and maybe have a little fun this afternoon as things kick off tomorrow morning. So with us today, I'm going to have everybody kind of introduce themselves, and then we're going to dive right into all the fun. So do you want to start here?
I'm Adam Wesley. I'm a photographer here at the Press Gazette. I got into soccer from a very young age. I was born in England, hence the hat here, and I've played since I could walk and have been an avid fan ever since.
Do they hand those out in England?
Yeah, it's mandatory.
Mandatory.
With the birth certificate.
Here.
Did you?
We have a Florida viewer, so how's it going out there? And glad you're tuning in.
I'm Pete Frank. I'm the engagement editor. I've lived in West Germany and in Poland, and so on Saturdays, Sundays, I watch soccer on Eurosport. And I got introduced to it that way, but I grew up playing baseball, and it wasn't until my kids started playing soccer that I took more of an interest in it. And then they watched the 2015 Women's World Cup, and they really got into it. And as a parent, I realized, wow, this is done in 2 hours. It's not a baseball game that drags on for 3-4 hours with endless commercials. It's just straight action for 45 minutes, a break, and then more action. So I really got into it then.
I'm Robert Zizzo. I'm the editor at the Green Bay Press Gazette, and when I was about 18 or 19, I guess it was World Cup '82, and Italy won, and I'm Italian, and I was hooked from that point, and I started to really, it was like being 5 years old again and studying up on the history of the game and how it's played, and it's sort of taken over my sporting interest now. It's about, it's definitely my number one followed sport. I came to it late, but there are still a lot of things that I don't understand that probably Adam would, having played the game. But I'm a big, I'm learning as fast as I can.
Nice. Well, I came to soccer in the 80s, 90s also. Had family members who played the beautiful game. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember Subutio, which was like a little finger-flicking soccer board game that you could play. But that was huge at the Walsh family get-togethers in Florissant, Missouri. Go Walshes. And after that, as I was struggling to find NHL games on cable in the 90s.
What's the NHL?
Yeah. What's soccer?
Yeah.
I found they were on sort of like the second tier version of ESPN, and afterwards, or instead of sometimes, I'd often find English Premier League soccer highlights, and so I became a Manchester United fan. I will duck now. During the Eric Cantona days.
You like the Yankees too?
I do not like the Yankees, though. For a while, I did after the Boston Red Sox basically became the New York Yankees. It was like, okay, you got in cockiness, really just kind of cemented it for me, and so I've kind of become a fan ever since. Kind of run with fans and friends who also do enjoy watching a little bit of soccer here, and a few people in 2010 to watch the games with in Oshkosh, in 2006 in Oshkosh, and then I can remember waking up early in the morning or staying up late at night in 2002 for Korea and Japan. So longtime fan, as best I can, but still, I would probably vote Adam as our chief tactician and,
yes.
and understander of the game better than all of us, but nonetheless, that's where I started. So just to start off with some football news for you guys, while the U.S. is not in this, thoughts about U.S., Canada, and Mexico co-hosting the 2026 World Cup, as was announced today. Anybody thoughts?
Well,
Excitement?
really interesting in finding out whether that will mean 3 automatic bids,
I believe it does.
which will be, I don't think it's been completely decided yet, but if it is, that takes 3 out of a field of 32.
No, that year they're expanding
they're
to
expanding.
It'd be
48.
48 teams
Oh,
that
my
year,
word.
so
Excellent. Okay.
that's why it's
So
they
it's
probably
much
will
easier.
3 teams would
What do you think about 48-team World Cup?
the groups are going to be really weird.
It's messy.
I think, yeah.
Too messy.
It will be too messy. I don't know. I mean, like, does that then become like the elimination rounds become 20 teams, or
I don't think they've set a format for the
It'll be
preliminary
interesting.
yet, but
Okay.
yeah, it seems a bit at least for the first half of the tournament. It
Right.
seems a little.
But it'd
we
be
have
great to have it in North America.
Yes.
Time zone.
We could actually, you know,
Do it.
journalist salaries, we can actually maybe go see games.
Well, and on that end, you know, while Lambeau Field was listed as a possible host site for World Cup game, nobody here probably thinks that we're going to be that fortunate that all we'll have to do is just walk to a World Cup game.
It's not big enough.
I believe it was eliminated.
It was
from
eliminated?
the
Okay, I
pool.
was
It
not
was in
sure.
the initial pool of stadiums, but I think Kansas City is still on the list as far as a Midwest town.
playing
but
field isn't big
Cincinnati,
enough.
I think.
And they'll have to. They played them in Chicago before.
One of our colleagues who covers the other football, Aaron Nagler, says 48 teams will be terrible, but on the plus side, it does mean more day drinking. And that is definitely true.
Nothing
That's a lot
wrong
more
with that.
games to watch or to pack into, you know, essentially a 30 to 31 day tournament. So
Right.
it will be interesting to see what happens with that.
Or maybe it's a 40-day tournament. Who knows?
Maybe it will be. I would not
complain.
complain about a 40-day tournament,
No.
although my vacation bank might get a little.
Well, I
upset.
think, and another thing with that stadium availability might be an issue if it goes longer because you have training camp at preseason football. You have all sorts
Oh, yeah.
of things if they're football stadiums.
Yes. So
Right.
to shift back to the present World Cup that kicks off tomorrow with Russia, Saudi Arabia, real barn burner of a start there. We're gonna try and get you thinking about other storylines though that might be coming up in you know, or things to watch for, fun little tidbits to be aware of. And I'm going to start with my 3 things. We were each asked to come up with 3 things, and my 3 things will be: number 1, how does Mexico do? Number 2, how the underdogs do, specifically Peru and Iceland. Iceland kind of became well, I think you'll see a lot of Iceland backers around here. Peru, personally, I think is going to be quite the impressive team. Might surprise a few favorites, you know, and really put forth a strong showing. And then for a little bit of fun, for those of you who are watching the 2014 World Cup, will Uruguay's Luis Suarez repeat his feat and bite somebody else in this World Cup? So, team, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on any
Well,
of these.
Mexico.
Mexico.
I've seen. I think Grant Wall, in fact, of Sports Illustrated, has Mexico beating Brazil
Wow.
in the first knockout round.
That's ballsy.
That is a
Yeah, and
that is
he
a
knows his
bold
stuff.
strategy
I mean,
right
Grant
there.
Wall is
Grant Wall is
doing his job.
definitely a very good reporter. I think he works for Sports Illustrated.
Sports Illustrated, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that they played either to a tie when they played them last, or possibly beat them. So then again, the World Cup doesn't have a lot of surprises in it generally. I mean, you have a very small group of countries that have ever won the World Cup, so it's not
Yes.
8 countries.
8 countries. Yeah, but where does Mexico?
I
where do they
think
stand, do you
Mexico
think?
escapes the group stages, makes it into the knockout rounds, but you know, it'll be hard. It's hard to tell with El Tri entering this tournament. You know, they kind of qualify by the seat of their pants sometimes in a group that they should dominate, so we'll see what happens with that. And
Historically, they get out of the group and then they lose in the first knockout game. That's
Mhm.
sort of the hump they can't get over, and the draw looks like they very much played Brazil in that round. So not the best draw for them, but
Right.
they
Not the
they
best
open with
draw at
Germany
all.
too. So
Mhm.
on Sunday.
It'll be
So,
a huge
yeah.
test.
yeah.
and Luis Suarez biting anybody this
Well,
year? Is
if
he going to find some shenanigan to exceed
Has he bitten anybody since the last World Cup?
No, but that wasn't
Maybe
his
he's lost
first
his
one.
taste for it.
That wasn't. Oh, Pete, nice job.
He
with the
had
pun there.
at least twice before biting Chiellini.
Well,
he had twice been.
He won't be able to buy any Italians in this World Cup.
That is
That-
true.
Way to bring that up. Let's get that clear right now.
They're
okay?
playing. Imagine if he bit Russia, one of the host nation players.
Oh my word! How would he
They're
get
in the
out
same
of?
group.
How would he get out of the country? Like
I don't know.
Uruguay would have to like postpone their next matches.
His teammates have said he has matured.
Well, that's good. And I mean, the crazy thing about it is for as weird as this may sound, he actually did bite somebody, and he is one of the like premier strikers in the game.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he can.
He doesn't need to bite anybody.
Yeah, he doesn't need to
Yeah.
bite anybody. He can pull some amazing golazos out of his butt, as seemingly at will sometimes. But then he does silly things like this. So maybe he has matured.
Silence of the Lambs, man.
Yeah,
We'll find out.
We will find out. And Adam, what are you hoping to kind of pay attention to or watch for in yonder World Cup?
So, first thing I have here is Egypt, and they're in the first group, so they're going to be one of the first teams you're going to be able to watch. And their forward Mohamed Salah, who recently played in the Champions League final for Liverpool, and injured his shoulder, but is still supposed to take part in at least some of their games in the group phase. He's had an amazing club season. It'll be great to see him on the world stage. Egypt are in the group with Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Uruguay. So it's a lot of people think it's doable for them to get out of the group if Salah
Sure.
shows up and is fit and can score goals. So he's definitely been one of the best, if not the best, forward over the last club season. So it's going to be really interesting to see what he can do for his country. Second, I have Spain, who it was announced this morning fired their coach.
That was
2 days before their opener against Portugal because he took a job with Real Madrid without telling them beforehand or something like that.
They found out 5 minutes before the press
Yeah.
conference.
Well, and I don't know
So-
who exactly like is
Standard.
responsible for being like, hey, we're looking at this guy for the coach, or if the coach would be like, hey, they want me to take this job. What do you think? Like, you would have thought that a Spanish club would not have interfered
Right.
with the Spain's national team 2 days, 3 days before the World Cup.
It's
But
not like
here
he's
we
going
are.
to coach in a different country, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Like they didn't know where to find him, or
And someone in this room picked them to win the whole thing in my bracket. So the squad is phenomenal. It is completely stacked at every position, basically. We'll see whether they need a coach, basically, or not. That they've already named the replacement, but that's a lot of disruption to a World Cup camp 2 days before they played their neighboring Portugal in their opener. So it'll be very interesting to see whether they hold it together or completely fall apart, or
So they're a
really opens
team
it up.
that is probably, to me, the best passing team in the world.
Sure.
Does a change in coach affect that much?
What I'm gonna, maybe not, but maybe
Yeah.
huge semifinal
The mental
against
game.
Germany or Brazil or France or somebody like that.
Right.
Then you have all of the little tactical adjustments that are the difference between winning or losing a World Cup,
Sure.
and then you've lost your main guy. So I think that I'm not thinking they're going to implode, but it seems likely to me that their edge at the end could definitely be weakened.
Makes sense.
And then
yeah, go ahead.
for my final thing to watch, everybody's favorite VAR,
Which
video
is-
assistant refereeing, which has been implemented. Yes, which has been
When you see a referee do this.
implemented in varying degrees of success in most leagues around the world now. It's used in MLS.
Serie A.
And
Bundesliga.
Bundesliga, and they announced that it will be used at the World Cup, which means there's a room full of referees that are not on site at the game that will be reviewing certain plays, video review, and relaying that information to the referee. There's also a pitch side monitor for certain incidents, so it's
Okay.
going to be used in 4 potential incidents, which would be straight red cards, penalty incidents, goals, like I believe all goals are reviewed, and then mistaken identity, like if there's a wrong
he-
player
if he
gets a
cards
yellow
the wrong
card,
person,
which
then-
has happened, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
And one other note about that, they have said that in marginal offsides cases, the linesmen on the side have been instructed not to flag the play
Marginal.
dead. So if the player is almost, if it's not clear whether he's on or offside to the naked eye, which is many offside decisions because it's such a pace, they are supposed to not flag and let the video. And then if the guy scores, they review it, and if he was offside, the goal does not count. But they only obviously if he misses, it doesn't matter. But
taking that approach,
it's going to be interesting.
taking that approach as a hockey fan who is now sometimes suffering through goal reviews, or a Packers fan who has watched a referee video reviews that were supposed to be 90 seconds drag on for minutes. That really worries me, that they're basically saying if you think they might be onside, or if you think they might be offside, don't call it. Let us review it, because this could lead to just constant
Well, that's the question.
delays or
Right.
multiple minute reviews.
And not to mention, instead of 3 or 5 minute penalty time at the end, you're talking 7.
Seven.
8,
Yeah,
9
yeah.
minutes.
I mean, how do
Yeah.
they do that? Do they actually? Will it, maybe in future iterations they will stop the clock?
There are more questions than answers, I think, right now for that. But I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that a team, probably England, is going to be eliminated based on a
Hopefully.
controversial VAR decision, and maybe multiple teams.
Are you thinking of Frank Lampard in 2006?
Well, that was the incident that.
Or was
Goal
that-
line technology has been
2010.
implemented.
That was
That was
2010.
2010, because in the last World Cup they had goal line technology implemented because Frank Lampard of England had a shot that crossed the line against Germany, but the ref ruled that it did not. When video would have clearly that would have been a goal.
Leave it to the
So,
English to slow the game down.
There we
no,
are,
I
and
know.
so they will probably be eliminated by VAR, probably against Germany in the quarterfinal. There's my pick for.
Quite a
Uh,
narrow.
for that.
Pete, what do you have for some talking points or things you're going to be watching?
Well, 3 storylines I'm kind of watching would be one off the pitch, Russian hooliganism. Since the early 90s, they kind of copied the English on hooligans at games, and in fact, in the 2016 Euro Cup, they showed up in Marseille and took on some English supporters and left 2 of them in comas.
Yes.
So Russia started to crack down in December by raiding a bunch of homes of known hooligans, and also they banned alcohol on the free trains that are available to fans to take them from the Urals to
Functioning
Kaliningrad
mass
and
transit?
from St. Petersburg down to Sochi.
Nationwide, or
That's what they said.
Wow.
That's what I read.
Wow.
This is impressive.
that is impressive.
But they banned alcohol on there, so that's good.
It would be a bad look. for
Yes, they are
Moscow
worried
to
about the
have-
Trains full of drunken hooligans.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be a bad look.
Yes, their reaction to Marseille wasn't necessarily apologetic until they realized, wait, we don't want this going on during our World Cup. So then they sort of cracked down.
Yes.
Germany and Brazil could be meet in a round of 16, and that could be a big revenge match for Brazil because Germany absolutely destroyed them 7-1 in the last World Cup. And the only goal Brazil scored was in the 90th minute. So it was just kind of garbage time goal.
Sorry to wreck it for Brazil supporters and people who are back in Brazil, but that was just a mind-blowing game to watch. And I don't know, maybe it was just the sheer cockiness of the Brazilian fans thinking that their team was just guaranteed they were going to do it, and then just the collapse. 5 goals. I think Germany scored 5 goals, I think, in 4 minutes against the Brazilians in this game. It crushed Brazil, I think, the entire
Oh,
country.
their whole
Oh,
identity
for
is-
sure.
is
Um,
on.
and,
A rematch would
it's
be
on.
fascinating.
It really would be fascinating.
Because the Brazilian team is good, led by Neymar, and who knows what would happen in a rematch on a neutral site.
Or if David Luiz plays in his position. But that's getting a little bit
That's
more
the eternal
technical.
question.
Yes, indeed.
Another storyline would be those countries not participating and watching on the sidelines besides the U.S. We mentioned Italy, which I think it's been 60 years since they last missed a World Cup. But they've won 4 titles, so they have a bunch of trophies in the trophy case.
They can console themselves with several World Cups.
The other one is the Netherlands, which is they're basically the Minnesota Vikings of the World Cup. They've been to 3 title matches and lost all 3.
Still pissed about Argentina in 1978.
And called the best team to have never won the World Cup. So.
And yes, I raise my hand because I am a Dutch fan. The 90s, 2000s teams of Mark Overmars, the Johan Cruyff teams of the 70s, they're just usually fun to watch, and I say usually with the asterisk in that statement being the final of the 2010 World Cup, where they were playing Spain, and I wouldn't call what they played soccer so much as full contact taekwondo. Like, it was just
which is so different from the Dutch game.
Yes.
They transformed the game in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean,
football.
And so to see them play this, I mean, I really wanted the Dutch to win that game, and then when I saw how they played, I was sort of just like, ugh, they don't really deserve to win this, so go Spain. Like, and then I was happy when the Dutch clobbered Spain in the first round, in the first game of World Cup 2014. So, yes, I like this. Other teams, other fan bases to watch besides the Dutch and the Italians.
No, those are the only 2 that.
Maybe the U.S.
In the U.S., right? But we can look ahead to 2026, which is only 8 short
years away.
Yeah.
8, yeah.
Oh boy! And Robert,
My 3, 2 of them are on what could be perceived as underachieving teams. First being Argentina. They have an amazing group of scorers. When you talk about, of course, Lionel Messi. You've got Sergio Aguero, Gonzalo Higuain, and Paulo Dybala. I counted up their goals just this past season, and these are amazing numbers for these 4 guys. So Messi had 50 total goals. Aguero had 32. Dybala had 26, and Higuain had 27. Those are
whole teams go a season without scoring 50 goals.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
So, but that's part of their issue is that they're so top heavy. Or Higuain will be at the top, and then Messi will be playing in the middle. But their defense is just shaky.
Yeah.
I mean, at best, they're old.
They're slow. They're old. Their starting goalkeeper had to withdraw with an injury.
Yeah.
So it's sort of very top heavy and teetering on. Very vulnerable to a counterattack. Very vulnerable to pace for another team. So I've seen predictions anywhere from them flaming out in the group to winning the World Cup, which is sort of there are very few teams that you see that wide of a range of outcomes.
I mean, if for those American fans who love scoring and hate soccer because it doesn't score enough, you could see some 4-3 games out of Argentina.
Absolutely.
So if you're in it for the scoring and you're not necessarily in it for the beautiful technical ability or the beauty of the game itself, if you're in for scoring, watch for Argentina. The second, also sort of underachieving team, I think we touched on, is Belgium.
Yeah.
They call this the golden generation. All this talent has come together at once, and they've got international stars like throughout. I mean, Courtois, their goalkeeper as a forward, and Fellaini, Dembele is a top-notch player. This is a team that's loaded with talent, but nobody is predicting them to even make the semifinals.
Well,
I wonder.
They underachieved. It was roughly the same team 2 years ago in the European Championships, and they underachieved in that.
Well, and
they have since changed coach, and that was deemed to have been part of the problem. So we'll see if Roberto Martinez, their new coach,
who's sort of a journeyman coach. I mean,
Um,
he's been all over the place. Coach
Everton
Premier League.
got rid of him, and now he's the Belgian coach. So, but the team is as good as any on paper that you maybe will see. So,
well, I mean, at the same time, Belgium in 2014 in the World Cup in Brazil was one Chris Wondolowski shoving the ball down into the ground instead of roofing it from 4 feet away from extra time against the U.S. and potentially a little bit of an embarrassing exit there too.
Well, given that Tim Howard had made already 16 big
Amazing
saves in that
saves,
game
yeah.
too,
Okay, so maybe it was
was
the U.S. was spared a humiliating defeat by an amazing performance by Tim Howard. Nice way of looking at it.
But
yeah,
that they were good then too, and they underachieved, and they've consistently done that.
Mhm.
I think they're a little better now than they were 4 years ago.
Yeah, so
but
I
those
think
players have raised their
they
game.
could be a
but
team to really.
They could definitely be a dark horse.
They would
if
not
they
be
put
a
it
huge
together.
surprise if they were there at the end.
Right,
definitely.
right.
My third thing is, I love the number 10, the traditional number 10 player, which is sort of the playmaker. It's sort of the point guard, if you will, of soccer, and they control the ball. They serve the ball. They've always fascinated me. Even players like Pele and Maradona and Zidane, Andrea Pirlo, if you will.
Yeah.
These are players that can control a game, and some to look out for that are playing in this World Cup are for Serbia, Sergej I can never pronounce his name, Milinkovic-Savic
Okay.
from Lazio, Eden Hazard for Belgium from Chelsea, Luka Modric for Croatia from Real Madrid, and one sort of wild card for Germany because of an injury is Mesut Ozil, if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Yes.
who plays for Arsenal. And it was a big disappointment for Arsenal fans, but when he plays for Germany, he takes on a whole different character. So these are the guys that I love to watch. They have great tactical abilities, pass the ball really well, control the ball really well. To me, there's nothing better than seeing a player who can do things with the ball when he's surrounded by 3 defenders and still is able to control it and escape or pass it. To me, that's the beauty of soccer.
It has no weakness as a German team. Some might say. I know that there are a few fans of the German national team who are hoping probably that they will repeat. But yeah, and kind of along the same lines as you were talking about with Argentina and Lionel Messi. I'm curious to see how Portugal does. They won the Euros, which kind of surprised me. It wasn't the team that I would have picked to come out of that. Just crucible that tournament was, but they did come out of it, and they've got kind of the second best player or the co-best player in the world right now. But again, a team where a little thin in certain spots, and you kind of need that star power to carry you. And if you're it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So. And we're going to wrap up now. I need
predictions.
Yes, with predictions and who you're pulling for. 'Cause who we expect to win probably may not be the team that we're pulling for. So, Robert, we're going to start with you.
Start with me. Okay, so I'm gonna process through this a little bit. So
Into the mind.
Okay, so
remember, Italy is in
Italy. Oh, Italy's
Yeah.
not in?
No.
Italy
Okay.
shows up, buys out Saudi Arabia, takes their place.
There was a headline I saw on Twitter today. There was a headline that the headline writer for some newspaper, instead of putting Germany in the headline, put Italy. Italy aims for repeat World Cup championship. Anyway, I can only wish that to be
Yes.
true. Anyway, so Spain we already talked about how they're a little bit shaky with their coach coming out. Otherwise, I'd have had them right there. Brazil, they traditionally don't do really well in Europe in the World Cup. So there's a factor there.
They didn't so well in Brazil either.
So then Germany and France, to me, are probably the 2 most safe bets. Germany, because they're just a machine. I mean, they've got I think, to me, they have the best system in the world, where their youth squads are in sync with their
national team.
their teams, which are
Yeah.
in sync with their national team. France is loaded with talent. They always seem to, have a hiccup. But my 2 sort of dark horses are Uruguay and Croatia.
Ah, interesting.
So that,
Who are
so
you backing?
So
Are
if you say, ask me who's going to win, I'm going to say Germany.
Okay.
And if you ask me who I'm pulling for, I'm going to say Argentina.
Pete?
My prediction is Germany.
Okay.
I mean, for what it's worth, in their 10 World Cup qualifying matches, they outscored the opponents 43-4. So they kind of steamrolled through that. And I'll be rooting for our neighbors to the south, Mexico.
Oh,
in this World Cup.
very nice.
Good.
Adam?
Good choice.
Okay. I am obviously rooting for England. I do not think they will win. However,
Have you
I think I'm realistically believe they can get to the quarterfinals. It's a young team, new system, new manager, a whole new thing. I think quarterfinals and moving on from the Iceland debacle of 2 years ago would be phenomenal. We can let a different nation be embarrassed by Iceland this year. Maybe Argentina. They play in their opening game
Wouldn't be
on
surprised.
Saturday. But
So in true English football loving style, like, have you decided, or do you have a prediction for whom the British press and public are going to blame for their
Well, I mean,
too soon exit from the World Cup when they don't win?
that'll be dependent on what happens in the game. You can't predict what the English tabloids will do.
Okay.
Them losing to Germany in the quarterfinal is a pretty solid bet for me. As
Fair
far
enough.
as my prediction, I had Spain winning it. When I went out and filled out the whole bracket the other day, they fired their coach this morning, so I had them. I still think they'll go deep, but I don't think they'll win it. But I had them beating Brazil in the final, so I guess I'm going to go to Brazil, since they would have been my number 2.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I have not quite fully decided who I'm going to back yet. It's kind of France. I mentioned Peru earlier. I'm just kind of curious to see, sort of dark horse what they do. So if I was pulling for anybody, I would probably say a good showing from Peru or Iceland. I kind of like the underdogs sometimes. For who's going to win it, it's probably going to be Germany. If I'm going to be sort of cold and calculating for like who it's going to be, I'm going to say Germany. I would like to see France though. I think they're one of those teams where they might finally have their act together, and if they can play well, they're going to really turn some heads. So
All right.
there we go.
Very good.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us to talk a little bit of world football here, some World Cup, have a little fun, and keep looking for Wisconsin World Cup FC, for group posts, share your thoughts, and
We might
Yeah, maybe.
have some meetups to watch games.
Yeah. do some interviews with other fellow football fans around Green Bay to kind of see what they're thinking.
Mhm.
Otherwise, enjoy the tournament.